Hey there, welcome to the Multifamily Mixtape Podcast, brought to you by Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Mark Sharp. Multifamily Mixtape is an eclectic podcast as we will discuss any and all things multifamily, from maintenance how-to videos to interviews with industry experts. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, and join me for some campfire-style conversation and maybe a few laughs. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today for the Multifamily Mixtape Podcast. I am super happy to have my good friend John Modlin with me today from Legacy Apartment Staffing. We are going to just dive into the world of apartment staffing. So John, first off, thank you for wanting to come on and let us talk for a few minutes.
No, my pleasure, Mark. Looking forward to it.
So, John, Legacy, apartment staffing, the whole multifamily industry. How in the world did you make your way into this industry?
Oh, wow. It was a long time ago in a galaxy far.
You remember?
I have been in this industry now 36 years.
Wow.
I started as a leasing consultant many years ago. I actually came from the hotel industry. I was managing hotels back in the late 80s, and the hotel that I worked for, the company I worked for, had 3 or 4 hotels, and I had managed all of them at one point or another, and they sold. And it was a very interesting time in my personal life going on, and I just made a knee-jerk decision. I'm getting out of the hotel industry. It was driving me nuts. I was going to have to move where I was at, and I didn't want to move again. I'd moved several times with this company. I just said, no, I'm not going to move again. And so my brain, I said, what else is out there that I could do that, I'm not far out of high school, a few years, but not that far. And I had done pretty well. I was pretty happy with what I was doing. But I looked at apartments and went, managing a building, hotel apartments are kind of the same thing. I'll go manage one of those. Straight out of my mouth, I'm going to go manage one of those. So I started applying for manager jobs, and I'm not getting calls back. And I'm like, this is really weird. I've got a good resume. I've got good experience. I'm not getting calls back. So I started going around and knocking on doors. Back then, you didn't have the internet and websites, and you faxed stuff over, and you went and knocked on doors. And long story short, I went into a company. There was a property in San Diego at the time where I was at called Loma Palisades. It had just been bought by a new owner, 548 apartments, and they were going to do a mass remodel, tear it down to the bone and rebuild it up again. And they were bringing in computers, which were brand new to the industry back then. They were not, you had your cards and you had your, all that stuff. They were bringing computers in, and they needed somebody that knew computers, and I did from high school. And so I got hired as a leasing consultant. Not what I was going for, but it was my foot in the door. And I said, you know what, I'll take this until I can convince somebody to give me a manager job, because that still was in my brain. I was qualified to do this. And so I started as a leasing consultant there, and literally day one, they said, here's your keys to the model. They're across the street. Your desk is here. Go to work. No training, no nothing, no anything.
Nothing's changed in 36 years, by the way. It's still that way.
Absolutely agree with that. And so I started as a leasing consultant. And again, my brain is thinking that I'm just going to do this job for a short time until I find a manager job out there, and I'll rock and roll. And I loved the job. I was great at it. I enjoyed it. I had a couple of good mentors at the property that had been on that property for 20 years, but man, they knew how to help people, and their customer service was second to none. And I learned that piece of the business first and foremost, how to take care of the customer. I worked for that company for 3.5 years. I became the assistant manager after a year. I managed that property for 6 months before I moved to another property and managed that one. Long story short, that's how I got in the industry. I was on the owner-operator side for 10 years. I was a regional manager for the last 3.5 of those. And after that, I left and went to the supplier side, and I've been on the supplier side ever since. Yeah.
Well, hey, I learned something new about you. I feel like we've known each other for a little while now, and especially with our involvement at our local apartment association. But John, honestly, I had no idea you started off where the like your origin story for, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, not a lot of It's been because it was so long ago. I don't share it very often anymore. I talk about more recent events, but it was a very fascinating for me because one of the things I ask whenever I'm interviewing somebody or talking to somebody about the industry, I ask them how they got into it. How did you get started? Because it's always fascinating to me. 90% of us fall into it somehow. A family member knows it and they got you into it, or you wanted customer service. You walked into an apartment community, tried to rent an apartment, and they were so horrible at it. You said, if they could do that, I could do that. And, I mean, I know so many people that have gotten into the industry by accident, and it's to me, it's a shame that it's not a more desired industry with how well it benefits people that are in it. I'm surprised that it's not more of a desired one, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue. I mean, you worked on site for a period of time. You went over onto the supplier side of things, but at what point did legacy apartment staffing come into the picture? Like, at what point did you say we need to create a placement agency? Like, what was the moment that said there's nothing out there for this, or I can do this better, or like, where did legacy come into the picture?
Well, staffing in general for me came into the picture years ago. I was managing a property in downtown San Diego. It was a brand new lease up, and we were doing a big grand opening. So we wanted to bring in extra people to help us. And we looked around for a temp agency that would help us with getting a leasing consultant, somebody that knows fair housing, knows how to lease, understands that. It wasn't there. That would have been in, 95, 94, 95. There just wasn't one out there. We ended up going to a regular temp agency to get just a general customer service person. But after that, we went to our local apartment association and said, hey, we have a great idea. This was me and my former business partner, David Carchidi. We went to them and said, hey, you guys need to start a staffing company that specializes in this industry. They laughed at us and said, that's not what we do. And I understand that. That's not what the association was about. So him and I started talking about it, and what a great idea it was going to be. We were going to start a staffing company. You need capital to do that. We didn't have that. Nobody wanted to fund us. So long story short, he went and worked for another company, another staffing company, and brought the idea to them, and started doing property management staffing. He worked for them for, I want to say, a couple of years before he decided that he was going to leave and start his own company. At the same time that was happening, he was going to move to Phoenix from San Diego. And so he went there and approached another company about doing the same thing, a company called Career Strategies. He started a division of property management for them. And about a year after he started it there, he came and approached me and said, hey, we want to open an office in San Diego. At that time, I was working for one of the rental magazines as a sales rep, and I jumped at the idea. And that's when I started doing staffing. I have never looked back since then. David and I owned APT companies that we started. We owned that for about 14 years before we sold it. Worked for a couple of different companies since then, and we started Legacy. My wife and I, about 3 years ago now, almost to the day, started Legacy when I moved out to the East Coast. I wasn't going to commute to San Diego or to Phoenix or even to Texas, where we had markets at with our old company. But I wanted to do stuff out here where I was going to finish out my career. So we started a new company. We came up with the name Legacy, long story short, because I believe I have a legacy to pass on, and I want to help people create their legacies. Our logo, the little blue and red circle in the corner, is actually people with their hands up. It's working together. It's creating that team. It's creating that environment that hopefully will attract people to come into this industry and realize that it is an opportunity. No matter what your background is, if you like taking care of people, you can make your way in this industry and you can make a career out of it. And that's what I preach. That's what I sell. And that's what I think this industry should be about.
Yeah, I love it. I ask the question all the time, like, why do people not find this industry? Why is it why is it always by accident? It's to your example, you show up to lease an apartment and they do a horrible job and you say, oh, I could do this better. Or you show up to a property to lease an apartment and someone really likes your personality and they says, hey, we could use a leasing consultant. We'll give you a percentage off your rent. Come on board. And it I don't know. I've not met a single person. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure they're out there, but I have never met a single person who said, I chose this as my career. I went to school for property management. There's a handful of colleges that have courses for
Yes.
property management.
Yeah, I
I've
agree.
never met anybody who did this on purpose.
No, and I think part of that is the perception that the media gives our industry. We are still the mom and pop industry. We are the evil landlords that are out there. So, when people think about our industry, they don't think about this as a job. They think about it as what the media is telling them about it, and I think that's a big part of it. But also the opportunity out there with the schools. You're right. There's San Diego State is one of those schools. They have a property management program. University of San Diego now has a property management program, and I know there's several out there, but it's still not a sought after industry. I mean, they have to work hard to fill up classes. I have a friend of mine who teaches at San Diego State, and I've gone in to speak to her class a few times over the years, and it's not a robust filled room. It's a handful of people, and it's still, no matter what's out there, it's still not a sought after industry. And there's people, you can make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year if you do your career right in this industry. You can make really freaking good money, and there's people that just shy away from it because, oh my God, that's the evil landlord. I can't go do that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You said evil landlord and the way the media is perceiving the industry. And I like to think too, or I say I like to think, but I think back to sitcoms. When I was growing up, like you said, there was no internet, there were no apps on games, there was nothing digitally to occupy your mind. So you were sitting down on the couch as a family watching sitcoms, or you were going to the movies, or you were playing outside. But when I think back to like 90s pop culture ish, and you think about the television shows that were on at the time, when did you ever see, all of these people on these shows lived in a home or a community, but when someone from the multifamily industry popped onto screen, it was always some irritated old maintenance supervisor with a key ring this big and his butt crack hanging out, or his gut and the huge beard, the just disheveled look, and just awful take. And I wonder, like, is that the perception that people have about our industry? I mean, because there's nothing in pop culture, there's nothing on television that illustrates how professional our industry is.
Right.
I say professional loosely. I mean, there's some properties out there that do an amazing, phenomenal job, and they have that Ritz-Carlton mentality. They have that I will take care of you so well. But then we all know there's properties out there that need some help in this. But like, do you? I mean, like, can you think of a time when you saw someone represent the multifamily industry on television or in movies that was in a good way?
No, I mean, you're right. When you think about any time it's represented, you think of Mr. Roper on Three's Company. They're usually the joke of the show, the guy that comes in as a slapstick, moment in the show. The maintenance guy, you're right. There was never a professional looking maintenance guy that came in to do the work. It was always the drunk. It was always the old dude. It was the guy with the butt crack showing. It was the huge key ring. And maybe that's an idea for a new sitcom one day, is property management 101. How does what are the stories? Could you imagine if that I always joke, if there was a book out there of all the stuff that we've seen in property management, but if you could do a show about it, we would be the professionals, and the residents would be the jokes and the laugh out loud stuff. But yeah, the perception is just very hard to overcome. Whether it's politics, whether it's our industry, it's hard to overcome the perception that the mainstream media, and from newspapers to TV shows to radio, they all label us as the bad guy in every single scenario that's out there. I have never seen a story out there that represents us in a good light, that thanks us for the work that we do. I have a friend of mine in the industry that, he's talked about this perception thing for a long time. He says, look, the perception is we're the bad guy and we don't do anything. Well, let's quit doing everything. Provide what we have to provide, the minimal that we have to provide, the roof over your head, the four walls, and a key to your door. That's all we're required to provide you. We don't have to make sure that you have, the spa and the fitness gym and the computer center. We don't have to provide any of that stuff. We don't have to do anything extra for you. We do that because we care. But if you're going to keep pushing the buttons and telling us that we're the bad guys, we'll go back to the bare minimum and let's start from there. And, there's the dynamics, like I said, they go back and forth of the side that wants to do everything, the Ritz-Carlton type approach, and the other side that, they're just not good, and they're not good for a reason. Where's the balance? And how do we get the media to understand all that we really do for them?
Yeah. Well, let's dive into legacy for a second. So legacy apartment staffing works across many different roles in multifamily. So in that, you're working with candidates. Like, you have people come to you and say, hey, I need employment. But then you also have management companies coming to you and say, hey, I need people.
Right.
What trends are you seeing right now in hiring? Are properties more leaning towards the customer service? Well, I say customer service. Everyone's in customer service, but are people leaning towards the leasing side of things, the maintenance side of things? How's hiring on a leadership front? High end C-suite people. I mean, do you work? But you work across that entire spectrum. What are you seeing as far as trends go in hiring?
I think there's, maintenance is always the must have, and I think the reason maintenance is so much in demand is because it's hard to train somebody new in maintenance. It just is. There's not a lot of opportunity to do hands-on training, which is, training somebody in maintenance on a video and showing them how to do it is not going to get them to learn how to do it. They're just not going to be as good as somebody doing hands-on. And the challenge, I think, with all positions right now, whether it's leasing, maintenance, nobody on site anymore has time to train. They're not willing to take a chance on a new person anymore. There's some amazing people out there on the leasing side that have great customer service. I mean, they have the Ritz-Carlton of customer service. They can walk in the door and take care of your customer better than you probably do. But because they haven't been trained how to lease apartments, they haven't been trained how to do fair housing, these management companies and properties don't want to hire that new person. They want to take somebody who already has experience. Unfortunately, that limits your candidate pool tremendously if you're not going to try somebody new out. And I understand their challenges. And we've gone from an age where as a property manager, you had reports that you filed once a week. They went to your owner and you moved on. Now you've got your owner, you've got the investors, you've got the management company, you've got reports going to 12 different people every week, and you're so swamped doing reports, you don't have time to train anymore. So I think it's a byproduct of our industry and where it's gone. The condensation of companies where, the larger management companies are acquiring a lot of the smaller ones. And as they do that, they centralize more stuff. There's more investors involved. There's more ownership groups involved. There's more reporting involved. There's just more of everything. When you get to actually running the property, which should be the most important piece of it, it's an afterthought. They don't run the property. They run the reports. They count on people that already have experience to walk in and do it for them. And I think that's a trend that is hurting hiring in general, all the way across the board. we're because of that, we're not able to bring new people into the door and train them and get them to learn the industry so that we can grow our resource pool. We're constantly recycling the same people, and that's not always a good thing. Some of these people don't need to be recycled; they need to be recycled out. And,
Right.
and I mean, there's some that are great, but there's some that there's a reason why they've worked for 5 companies in the last 2 years, because they're not part of a team, they don't fit, whatever. And I think our industry is stuck in that trend of everything is centralized, everything is up here in the cloud somewhere, and it's not at the property level anymore. And that makes it very hard for management companies to get good people hired. That makes it hard for them to discover new talent on both the leasing and the maintenance side. And then you've got the upper management that, we're seeing it right now. It always goes through waves, but we're seeing a wave now of people changing companies all across the board. Their company was acquired, so they leave their company because they don't want to work for the big box company, and they go somewhere else. And every time that happens, it trickles down where all their favorites from their old company come over eventually to the new company. And so you see this trend happening right now, where it's starting now, where the upper management has moved. Now we're starting to see the movement at the property level, where they're starting to, regional manager A went over to property B, and now all her staff from her properties are starting to trickle over one at a time. It's an ongoing trend. But going back to the main question, I think the biggest trend is maintenance and finding a way to get them trained in hands-on training at the local level in different markets. It's just so cost prohibitive to do. You have to have a place to train. You have to have something built out, which means you've got to pay for space to do it. It's very hard to do. And even partnering with people, with Entryway and other programs that I know you work with, I work with, there's only so many they can do in a year. They could, it's like the housing shortage. We have a maintenance shortage, and nobody has found the way to produce enough maintenance fast enough to keep up with the need that's out there. I have ideas, but they all cost money, and they cost time, and finding the right balance of those to make it worthwhile for everybody is the challenge.
You're right. One of my follow-up questions was, with the ongoing tech shortage, how is your team helping communities find and keep solid techs? I 100% echo the challenges on training, specifically for maintenance. I don't want to get into the office and leasing. I worked in office and leasing years ago, but the technologies in the industry has changed so much that I just don't. I don't want to talk about something that I'm just not completely educated on, because I kind of like knowing what I'm talking about. And I know of policies and procedures 20 years ago that was in the office, but again, a lot of things have changed. But maintenance, I feel like I have my finger on the pulse pretty well there. And there's no training at all for maintenance anymore. It is welcome, fill out your paperwork online. No one sits down at a desk with you anymore and goes over anything. It's like, here's your virtual packet, fill it out,
Right.
whatever. Here's your key or your fob or whatever you need to get in and out of doors and systems. Here's your passwords. Here's your email, if you get one. And all right, have fun. You got a couple turns to do. We've got some work orders. Your supervisor's name is John. Go. And it's just off to work.
Yeah.
And when I made the switch, because I did start off in the industry on the leasing property management side. I was a property manager on a Friday, and I was relocating. And on the next Monday, because I moved that weekend, on Monday, I was a maintenance tech. So I went for,
Wow.
I did it. I did it. But at the time, I wanted to do, that was my decision, because I wanted to learn something new within the industry. And, I was lucky enough to work for a company that had onboarding, they had training, they had, hey, here's what your job entails, and here's how we want you to do it. Was it great? No. But was it a good start? Yes, absolutely. And it really taught you the company's policies and procedures, how you start a ticket, how you complete a ticket, the priority in which we want you to do these tickets, because, fair housing, it's not about, you can't just go up and take the stack and pull out the easiest ones. No. And this was back when there were paper work orders. There weren't things digitally to keep the most important in front of your face, right? So it was okay. You had to take the first of it, the one that came in first, unless it was an emergency. So those were things that was again a new tech coming into the field. Those were things that I wouldn't have known that. I wasn't trained in fair housing at this point, but we got a brief synopsis of it during our onboarding slash training, and that really kind of set some of those more important things up to me to help me understand. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I need to do them in order of the time that they were received, unless it's an emergency. So that was great. I don't even know that people get that anymore. You're lucky if your local apartment associations do anything for maintenance, because people just can't afford to send their guys off site. Like,
And that's your biggest
I mean,
challenge right there, Mark. They
yeah,
you can offer everything in the world for maintenance, but the on-site and the management companies, they're already short staffed. They don't have enough manpower to let them leave for a couple of hours, much less a whole day for training. And therein is the catch 22. They don't want to bring new people in. They don't want to train them, but they also don't want to train the staff they already have on how to advance. It's a tough place. We do a lot of recruiting from other fields like commercial maintenance, hotel maintenance, places where they at least already know the maintenance skills, and we'll teach them the fundamentals of property management. We put them through fair housing so they at least understand and will adhere to fair housing, and we give them some basics of, if you're going to be doing a turn, you're doing a make ready. You're going to get a checklist that looks something like this. You're going to go through. Here's how you do a make ready. You're going to get work orders. They're going to come either on your computer screen, or if they're a smaller property, you may still get a paper work order. It's going to tell you all the details of what needs to be done. You go in, you fix it, you get it done, you clean it up. It looks like it was brand new when you walk away. How to do this stuff in a residential environment. The hotel guys are the easiest because they've already done this. They're used to going into an occupied hotel room, having to do something quick because somebody's in there, and it's got to look clean when they walk out. So they're probably my easiest to convert. Commercial's a little bit better, or a little bit different, but they still get it. But it's still, the percentage of people that we can bring from those environments is a small percentage, because it's not like they're making more money in our industry than they are in those. So, what's to convince them to come over here? And that's the whole nother story is the pay, and what is a good maintenance tech worth? All those things could answer, a lot of questions in our quest to fill these roles that so desperately need to be filled.
right. And the way you just related, like hotel being used to going in and fixing things quickly while people are there, versus the on-site property management side of things. I remember a time when you would go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 9 o'clock, your community was empty because people left. People
Right.
went to work. Cars were gone. You didn't have, on the rare occasion, out of 30 work orders, you might find 2 or 3 people home. Now it's like everyone works from home. Someone is home all the time. So our techs, it's great that you know how to fix the problem, but now you need to learn how to communicate, because you're interacting with residents now a whole lot more than you used to 20 years ago.
Right.
I mean, I don't know exactly when it happened. I don't want to blame it on COVID. I don't think it was COVID.
It was going on
That
before that.
It was going on before that, but I think COVID made it worse, because now companies realize, oh, you mean I don't have to pay for this brick and mortar building for you to all come to where you can be just as productive from your house, and that makes culture better, because now you relieve the stress of the commute. Like, I mean, so now it just, to me, it seems like 9 times out of that 2 to 3 people out of 30 is now 25, 26, 27 people out of 30 who are going to be home during your repair. And so the get in, get out, the knowing how to communicate to residents, what to say, what not to say. I mean, let's face it, we're maintenance guys, right? I mean, our language can be a little colorful at times because of a certain situation, and you got to know how to talk around residents. And I think that's where training has to be more focused. Yes, it's great that I want to teach you how to fix certain things, but now I need to teach you how to communicate. I need to teach you what you should say, what you can't say. That brings fair housing more into play than I think ever before. Not just in the order in which you do work orders, but but now you have to be careful about being in someone's home with all these digital PMS systems and digital work orders, and you're supposed to take photos of the work that you completed, but you have to be careful because in that picture, what if what if I patched a hole on a wall, right? And I go to take a picture that it's been done and repainted, and just off to the side of that, there's a picture of Jesus Christ on the wall. Now I violated that person's religious, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that maintenance specifically need to be trained on, and they're not being trained on it.
Well, yeah, the customer service alone, 20, 25 years ago, the customer service you needed them to know is when you see somebody, outside their apartment, they're outside, in the yard or walk into their car, you wave and smile. That was the extent of customer service they needed to worry about, because you're right. Nobody was in the apartments. Now they have to know how to communicate. They have to understand customer service. They are now probably more than ever the front line of your face of your community. And if they don't have the right communication skills, they don't have the right customer service, they are a detriment. I don't care how good of a maintenance tech they are, they become a detriment. So yeah, they are the most multi-trained person on your property, as far as they should be able to be customer service oriented enough to go in and lease an apartment if they had to. That's how strong they have to be realistically to be able to communicate with people out and about the community. And they're not. They're not being trained that way because the companies are so desperate to get the maintenance part done. And I can tell you, I've seen some of the people that they've hired from us that they're okay, but they're not where I would be if I were a property manager and hiring somebody that's going to be talking to my residents. They're not strong enough. They're barely competent enough on the customer service side, but they're great at maintenance. So we're going to bring them in because I got to get my maintenance done. And then we go back to the other piece of, okay, well, you can get more training for them now that you've hired them, but they won't let them ever leave the property to go do it. So that's the catch-22, where we'll hire the good maintenance guy, but we're not going to train him anymore. We're just going to hope we're going to close our eyes, and we're going to hope that he doesn't do something wrong with a resident that causes a fair housing complaint or some other kind of complaint. And it's a tough position to create for somebody. If you're hiring somebody new, it's tough to find that really strong one that already has experience, because he's unaffordable for most companies anymore, because the larger big box companies they can afford to pay more, and they're going to. So the small regional management company that has 5 or 6 properties doesn't have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal, to be able to afford to match what those big box stores or companies are paying for. So it's really hard. The trend is to going back to the original question. The trend is all over the place, but the real trend is can you afford to hire the right maintenance tech, and when you do, can you afford to get him trained and continue his education? He can't just come in and work and do the same thing over and over again. He needs to be trained more. He needs to grow. Otherwise, somebody is going to eventually steal him from you. One of the big box companies will, and they're going to pay him more to come work for them, because you're just like everything. You're either stagnant and you're going to go down, or you're learning and growing. You can't just maintain. Maintaining doesn't cut it anymore. You're doing one or the other, up or down. And it's the same with a maintenance tech. He's either going to want to grow and do more, or he's going to find somebody that will help him do that. And that's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. And I have a theory that a lot of those maintenance personnel for those local regional 5 or 6 property companies are are very good at their jobs, and I think that's why associations and NAA as a whole. I'm on the IRO committee, Independent Rental Owners, and one of the challenges that we've brought forward is how do IROs compete with the larger companies in maintaining their personnel and providing training and providing all of these things because they don't have the resources of the big box stores. But my theory is I think that's why we don't see them because their managers, their owners, they don't want them to leave because I don't want you to see what's out there. I don't want you to see that you could go and make. I mean, I know of maintenance personnel making a lot of money because they're really good at what they're doing.
Right.
And I mean, if I had somebody that was great at keeping my property running smoothly, and I know that I'm getting the better end of this deal because I'm paying this individual much less than what he's worth or she's worth, I don't want them to leave my property. I don't want them to go and see what this whole industry is doing for maintenance. Like I want to keep you as tight as possible. So I have a theory that there's some of that going on with these local and regional management companies. But then again, I mean, I prefer the local regional because I can call the owner and say, hey, I've got a problem, and I can get a yes or no right then and there. I don't have to go through 13 steps to get something, and then someone forgot to send it, and this and that, and then all of a sudden we're 2 months down the road and I don't have an answer. So I prefer the local stuff, and I love that. But I think I'm right though in my theory that we don't have a lot of involvement from these smaller companies because they just don't want people to know that their teams are out there.
Well, I can tell you, when I was in San Diego, I used to teach a lot of classes out there from leasing and fair housing and other things. And I've had, and in trying to market those classes in the past, I would have owners, operators, management company people tell me, I'm not sending my people to your class. And why not? I mean, I know I'm not the best instructor in the world, but I'm pretty adequate out there. I can do it. And they said, but you'll have other people from other management companies there, and I don't want my people exposed to that. I don't want them to know what's out there. I've been literally told that in the past. And I think as from a local association standpoint, as we have people from the various management companies that will come in and teach a class, whether it's on maintenance, leasing, whatever, if they're from another management company, it's really hard to convince somebody from ABC Properties to come in and send their people there, knowing that there's a regional or somebody from that management, another management company, a competitor that's going to look around that room and go, darn, there's some really good people in this room. I should make sure they have my card before they leave. I'm not going to recruit them, but I'm going to let them know, here's my card. That's all it takes sometimes. And so from my point of view, I understand their apprehension, but at the same time, if you're a good management company, your people shouldn't want to leave. And so it's a twofold problem. We need to go to those management companies and say, hey, is this the reason why you're not sending people? And if it is, let me help you be better so that you don't lose your people to other companies. Right. That's the bottom line. But it's the trend of movement right now amongst our industry, amongst different management companies. Excuse me, is it's growing. I think you're seeing more and more of it every single day as companies try to save money, as companies try to grow. There's just so much movement. It's insane. I've in 35 years in the industry, I've never seen as much movement in every facet of it, from the upper management, the C level, to the property level, to the maintenance side, even on the supplier side. You're seeing movement left and right, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
So I mentioned being on the IRO committee, but I'm also on the NAAEI curriculum development, and we were in a meeting at Apartmentalize, and my friend Chris Caramonica said something to. It's a joint committee, so you've got program administration and curriculum development in the same committee meetings, and I'm on the curriculum development side. Chris is on the program administration side, and we were talking about a lot of things, but Chris said, we as an industry should stop fighting over each other's people and start fighting over the leases. Like let's quit poaching the people and let's let the best product win. Not, let's not make this a competition of individuals, because it's become that. It's become, we're going to poach this person, this person, instead of worrying about the leases and taking care of your customers. Although I think maybe the thought is, well, if I get these better maintenance, we'll be able to take better care of our customers. But the whole thought behind the thing is, let's stop doing that. Let's develop programs that make our teams better without having to steal talent. And that's why I love being in a room with people smarter than me, because I never would have come up with that. I like, as simple as that sounds, let's stop fighting over individuals. Let's create programs that help educate those individuals so that we don't have to steal, and let's let the best product win, not who has the best people. And I just, that, like, right? I mean, as simple as that is, it makes perfect sense. And yes, Chris, I just gave you a shout out on my podcast. That's ridiculous.
Well, I agree with you. I look at a management company and, they've hired a leasing staff, they've hired maintenance staff, whatever. You hired those people because you thought they were good and they were going to be good for you. Instead of going out and trying to find somebody that's better than them, make them better. Again, the concept of continuing to educate your team. And, and I'll use my own company as an example. I've hired salespeople and recruiting people. Are they the best out there? I don't know. They're the best for me. And I'm never going to look to try to upgrade that person to a better person. I will continue to educate my people. I will put them through NAA's programs that they have when they come up with a new one for the suppliers. NAA, get it done. Come on. Just a shout out to NAA to get that done. When they took away the certified apartment supplier course, they haven't replaced it. I don't know that there's a replacement in the near future, but we need it. So, to educate my team and make them better is how I find better people. And I wish more management companies would think that way. But I can tell you that they don't, because every company out there, they've got headhunters, just hitting up LinkedIn and everything. I probably get 3 a week saying, hey, are you ever interested in something different? I'm like, no, I own my own company. I'm not selling my company. I'm not going away, and I don't have time for 2 jobs. So no, I don't. But it's always with the caveat, if you know somebody, we're looking. They're just, it's automatically poaching, and it doesn't help our resource pool. It doesn't help anybody get any better. It doesn't solve anybody's problems. It just moves it around from one point to another.
Right. So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about multifamily, or about how multifamily hiring is done, what would that be?
Me personally, I would decentralize everything they've done. Most of these companies have a central recruiting place. They recruit from Texas or Denver or wherever their main recruiting office is at. They use AI exclusively to screen out everybody, and it makes it so impersonal. One of the things I brag about with me and my company is I'm old school. I still do every single interview in person. I still want to talk to them. I want to shake their hand. I think you get a better feel for who the person really is when they are in front of you and they're sitting there and you're having a conversation like you and I are having. You get a better feel for who that person really is and not who they fake themselves to be in an AI interview. I've done one of those AI interviews years ago. It is the most unnerving process you could go through, and it's not an enjoyable process. It doesn't make me feel good about the company that I'm interviewing for. I wish companies would get away from that and get back to in-person interviews. The other part of it is these management companies have their central recruiting, and they're recruiting people for sometimes 20, 30 properties at a time. They're not interviewing based on personalities or attitudes or culture at that property. They're interviewing based on a skill set. And they're sending that person to that property saying, we've hired a leasing consultant for you. Well, that's great, but does their personality fit with the manager and the team that's there? Do they get along with the maintenance guys that are there? You don't know. And so I think getting back to old school, where yes, the central office can find some people, but you send a group and say, I'm looking at these 10 people. I want you to interview them in person and tell me which one you like, and let the property manager go back to being the one that hires their team. It's not the way it is right now. And it's that way with just about every company now, unless you're a small local company, or even the regional companies are doing it, where you may have some companies that are here in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Well, they're doing all the recruiting in Atlanta, and they're recruiting for North Carolina. Well, you don't know the makeup of that property. You don't know enough to hire that person. And I think it's just lost a lot of its personal touch, and you're not hiring on the important pieces anymore, which is the personality and the attitude. You're hiring on a skill set, and do they look professional on a screen? Well, that's 2 out of the 10 things that you need to be hiring on, and they're missing the rest of them. So if I could change one thing, that would probably be what I would urge every company to do, because you'll get better people guaranteed.
Yeah, I love that. There are applications where it works. There are things out there where yes, and I think our industry is I think we're using the term AI when we should be using the word automation.
Right.
AI has its ability to think and change and make suggestions based off of trends and be forthcoming and predict the future. In 6 months you're gonna like. So, I think AI is the buzzword now. It's the popular centralization AI. Those are the buzzwords right now. So we're going to put AI in front of everything, right?
Right.
We're going to have AI vending machines. No, it's a vending machine. Like it's not an AI market. I mean, there's nothing artificial about it. I mean, it records what's purchased and tells you what you need to refill. That's automation. That's not AI. So, and I'm sorry to pick on that particular topic. I just we need to stop with the AI. We just need to stop with it until something can actually become true artificial intelligence. We need to stop using that term because then when actual artificial intelligence comes, we're not going to know the difference, or it'll be like, what will it be called then? But I don't want to go down that road. That's a separate podcast, John, and there are other people that I would like to have on that.
I understand that one.
Yeah, I don't mean like me and you. I mean, I want people on here with us because it's ridiculous. Stop with the buzzwords, and centralization to me is one of those that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think there are some things that the industry is doing well. There's some phenomenal products out there to help you automate information.
Right.
But like you summed it up perfectly with your example. You've got a company in Atlanta that is hiring for individuals in South Carolina and Georgia, and you know nothing about the culture of the property. Does this individual fit? Because culture is huge now. One of my one of the podcast hosts on MMN, Kelsey, she's got something called the 4 C's. And she's an executive recruiter. And if you are not challenged, if the culture's bad, if the compensation's bad, or if the commute is bad or good or bad, but the four C's, if you have 3 of those 4 C's, if you're challenged, if the culture's good, if the compensation's good, if the commute is good, like where are you driving to and from work? If you have 4 of those 4, you've got it made. If you have 3 of those 4 C's, you have it made. If you're in the 2 to 1, if you don't have good company culture and you aren't compensated properly, then maybe it's time to start looking. But from a staffing point of view, like, who do you have coming to Legacy right now? Is it individuals who are just trying to make their way in, or do you see, you kind of touched on it briefly, but do you see people moving from property to property to property because they don't have those four C's? They don't have those things. What are you seeing right now? Are people moving that are currently employed in the industry, or are you more focused on bringing people to the industry? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 70% of the people we bring in are new to the industry. That's my preference. I sell that very highly with my clients, that I would rather bring you a brand new leasing consultant that we've trained, and we do in-person training. We do some Grace Hill. We mix the two. So we get the fair housing from Grace Hill to add to the fair housing that we teach in our class. So we bring in new people. Same thing with the maintenance. I talked about bringing them in from the hotel industry or commercial maintenance industry. But the people that are coming in that already have experience, I would say at least 50% of them are not usable, in my opinion. For me, I don't feel like representing them, because I don't think they're changing companies for the right reasons. They're changing companies
Integrity.
because
Like,
they know there's bigger out there, so they want bigger, but they're at a great company, they're making good money, and they think they can make more money out there, and maybe they can, maybe they can't, but they're not doing things for the right reason. So I don't necessarily think they're the best representation for what companies are trying to find. For me, finding those new people, increasing our resource pool is what it's always been about. It should be about, whether it's me, whether it's a management company doing their own recruiting, go find people from outside the industry. There's customer service people out there that are so phenomenally good, coming from retail, coming from hotel, bartenders. Go get me a bartender that can talk to somebody all day long, the same person all day, and have a conversation. That's what I want. I want somebody that knows how to take care of that kind of person. That can talk to anybody that walks in the door, whether it's the businessman, the maintenance guy, the plumber that walked in. They treat them all the same. They already understand fair housing, and they've never done it. They understand it. So I take those people, and I'd use those 10 times over before I hire what I call the retreads, the people that have been around. They've worked for 4 or 5 companies. They're not advancing their career. They're moving from point A to point B to go back to point A again sometime. And they're in the same position, doing the same role, doing the same thing, and hoping to make $1 more an hour. Why don't you advance your career instead? Let me help you advance your career. Let's get you some education and teach you some more so you can move up and become an assistant manager, or move into the corporate office and do something there in the marketing department or the training department, something. But these ones that do the lateral moves, I see them every day, and they're not. They don't know why they're doing it. They just feel like they're supposed to do that to better themselves. That's the way they want to better themselves. And I don't know that they're necessarily bettering themselves. They're just moving their problem from one property to another.
yeah, yeah. Well, John, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I would love to continue this maybe on another episode if you would like to come back. But in the meantime, how would someone be able to reach out to you if they were interested in wanting to learn more about Legacy Apartment Staffing?
Easiest way is go to our website. All our contact information is on there, legacyaptstaffing.com. My contacts up there, all my team's contacts are up there, but that's the easiest way to get a hold of us. You can find us there. And I would definitely love to come back on and do another podcast. I think you and I could talk maintenance for hours. And I have some ideas that I'm going to email you about after this to talk about on maintenance training, because I think there's some things that we could really do together that would be fun.
Oh, I love maintenance training. You have my attention. So excellent. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. To those of you that tuned in today to listen, I really, really appreciate it. I hope you gained something from this, whether it's revisiting the 4 C's, whether that's kind of understanding your role on the property and how you are responsible for your personal development. If your companies are not providing that for you, you need to find outlets for that. Reach out to your local apartment associations. I am Mark Sharp. I'm on all of the social medias. John Modlin, I know he's on the social medias. Either one of us would be happy to have a conversation with you, whether it's going to work with Legacy or you just want to run some ideas, or you just want to bounce some things off each other. We're good people. We're nice people. We'd be happy to help you out and give you some pointers. I mean, John's been in the industry 36 years. I'm on my 24th, 25th. I don't even know anymore. 20 something year.
I only because I had to look it up for a profile I had to do for NAA the other day, and that's the only reason I remember now. I would love to help anybody that needs help. Whether it's working with us or you just need some advice on your career, I'm here, and I do that all the time for a lot of people. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, John. And to those of you tuning in, we will catch you on the next one. See you later.
Thanks again for taking time out of your day to listen to this episode. I hope you found it entertaining and insightful. If you like this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts and sponsorship opportunities. And until next time, don't be afraid to crank the volume.